What's up? I wish I had some music. We'll get some very, very soon. Get going. Um, well, this is one of those things where I've been thinking about this for a while. I love to talk to people. I love to talk to folks. It is Wednesday night. Wednesday night therapy is my vibe. I've had so much fun doing that. So this is the night that I feel like it's raining here in Nashville, and the night that I feel like is best suitable to have these conversations. So, a little bit about who I'm bringing on. I'm bringing on a guy named Tom. And Tom is a very, very interesting, awesome dude. He is he was a Navy SEAL. He is super deep into fitness and learning how the nerves work and stretching the nerves. We've been working together the last couple of days. I've literally just met this dude. So it's one of those things where I wanted to sink into just talking with people that interest me. But this dude is a Navy SEAL. He's a great shooter. He's trained, obviously, and does all that stuff. But he's super into a lot of different things. Very, very interesting. He's a godly dude. He's very spiritually connected. So me and him connected on a lot of different levels. I'm going to ask him how he pronounces his last name, but you can follow him at Flow State Frogman, at Flow State Frogman, and you'll see him pop up here. But this dude is super cool and just just one of those guys that I met. To give you all a little backstory, I met this dude named Mike Smith in a hardware store right up the road from my house, and Mike Smith introduced me to multiple Navy SEALs, and I've always appreciated what a SEAL goes through and their mental drive, and that's what I'm sure we'll get into and talk about a good bit. Is me and him will talk about what it took, obviously to get through. We'll cover my injury, and he just asked me just a minute ago. He's like, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to do? And I said, I don't think there's any rules to this. We're just going to kind of vibe on a Wednesday night and talk about a lot of stuff. Talk about a spirituality. Talk about my mindset, his mindset, how being a Navy SEAL, and maybe how it improved your ability to basically do anything you want to do. And we'll share some secrets, I'm sure, but hopefully there won't be any technical difficulties. And yeah, he should be joining. It's just 6:57, so we're not officially going on till 7, but we'll try to get this rocking with any minimal effort. We got a lot of cool things going. I know I'm very excited about the record coming out. I'm excited about 2022. I'm just excited about this time of year and planning. We're just planning a bunch of cool things, and can't wait to go out with our brothers, Whiskey Myers. Can't wait to meet those guys. I've never met any of those guys yet, but my good friend Chris Hennessy, he speaks very highly of them. Jamie Johnson speaks very highly of them, and I love their music. So it's going to be really cool to be in in their world for a little while. So yeah, I got to figure out how to do this. I found it. Hold on. Tommy Aceto. I'm inviting him. lot of people coming in. Thank y'all for joining. This is going to be a cool conversation. I can't wait to chat with Tommy. Tommy Aceto is his name, and it's a really cool dude. I've invited him, so we'll see. We'll see if this works. All right, Tommy, I'm going to try you again. Tommy, shoot me a text if you're getting these invites. I don't know. I'm shooting you the invites. Yep. What's up, dude?
What's up, my brother?
Oh, man, just got through writing a little bit of a song and watching it rain. It's good to see you. It's been a long
Yeah,
time.
been a long time. How you feeling after that little stretch session?
I feel good. I was a little sore this morning, but
Mhm.
for the most part, uh, we were all right. We getting into that Zoaz. You say it Zoaz?
So as
Soaz.
yeah, it's a
It's like right beside your
silent P,
balls, huh?
silent P. So
Yeah,
as
Soaz. It's a tough spot, but I think we got
yeah,
it loosened up. Um, well, cool. This is the first one of these I've done. I appreciate you coming on, and I've just told everybody I've been on here about 5 or 10 minutes, and told everybody, um, but I'd like for you to tell a little bit about you, where you're from, where you're, what you've been through, just a little bit with the SEALs and that kind of thing. Just like a brief, whatever, 30-second. Hey, I'm I'm Tommy.
I don't know if I can give you much in 30 seconds, but I'll try.
Yeah,
So
Tommy's a long-winded brother like me, man.
yeah,
It's okay.
yeah. So I'm from outside of Detroit, Michigan. Um, Grew up in an athletic family. I played every sport. My dad was a gym teacher. Mom was an all-state swimmer, diver, and grew up on a lake, Lake St. Clair, and one thing led to another in my life, and I'll just cut it short. Have you ever seen the movie Forrest Gump? That feather, that's kind of been my life. I ended up in the SEAL teams because a buddy I played college soccer with told me I should be a SEAL. I told him that was crazy. He said, "You're crazy." I said, "You're right." And then that was it. Like, that's all it took. Fast forward 17 years later, after being a Navy SEAL, um, learned a lot about myself, about people, about medicine, um, about the mind, about people call it mental toughness. I call it programming. Um, and I was a medic the whole time in the SEAL teams. I was a pre-med in college, wanted to be a pediatrician since I was like 5. And that didn't turn out, but God had other plans for me and ended up becoming a special forces medic and a SEAL. And then after 16 years, got some boo-boos in the brain and wear and tear on the body. And I went to every dang, medical facility that the government could offer, every type of treatment. And the one thing I realized was, as trained as I was in medicine and trauma medicine and physical medicine, basically from the neck down, we didn't really touch a lot of mental health stuff. We didn't really get into what I call emotional health because we didn't want to look at it, to be quite frank. We didn't ever want to tell anybody that we might have something wrong with the operating system that allows us to be SEALs. And so I don't want to get off too much, but what I realized was that the body is integrated. And I think the best physicians out there right now are starting to understand this integration. And really, if they're worth their weight, they'll really understand how little we knew about the nervous system in general, which is basically your mind. It's basically it's your computer that you program with all the senses your whole life. And that's kind of how you and me met, was after learning all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we met. I'll tell the guys, all the people out here. And by the way, it doesn't matter if we go down 10 rabbit holes. That's why I'm doing this, because I go down rabbit holes, and I don't care if we're on here an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It doesn't matter. I'm here to have the conversation. So, for me, I believe the stroke got me into this place where the mind and paying attention to the brain and how it connects to our nervous system and shocking the nervous system and getting back these motions and things that I lost. We have talked about the spiritual side of that and getting into, I mean, I've literally visualized my nerves growing. Like, I visualized that, and I told you that I visualize it in a light of blue. And when I close my eyes, I can visualize my nerves growing and wrapping around my hands and my hands moving. And like, as hippy dippy as that sounds, like, it is the true letting go of every stigma of everything you've ever heard in your life of, that's a little too far fetched, that's a little too hippie, or we got to get in, you got to smoke some weed or trip some acid to get into that level of thinking. Well, I think that with my healing, spirituality, that the 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 healing process, the meditation process, the whole thing, the manifestation process of me meeting you, because make no mistake, I truly believe I manifested you. Like, I don't even know if you're real yet. I'm
Well,
sort
maybe
of
I should call you God, because I thought that's who
no.
brought me here. But
No,
turns
you
out it was
should.
Drake White. I'll be
No,
damned.
that's a totally different podcast. Sorry. Um, I I really feel like I said, oh, it would be perfect if I had somebody that was a little deeper than the bathtub, that could understand. I'm a writer and I'm a feeler. I feel people, and I can feel things that others can't. That's why I'm an artist. And that's why a lot of artists get taken advantage of, if I can go down that road for a second, because we feel all of this stuff and we fall in love and we do all this stuff very, because we're open. You have to be open. You have to be vulnerable. And so my healing process, I've invited everybody into my living room of talking about it, because I don't give a shit. I don't care about the masculinity, or like being from Alabama, like it wasn't cool to open up and cry and talk about your spirituality and spirit and all of this stuff. I had a great set of parents that allowed me to open up and do that stuff. But this injury has brought me to a whole nother level of not giving a shit in what people think, which has made me freer, which has made me a freer person, which has made me a freer follower of Jesus and his teachings and all of this stuff, and understanding what we were talking about last night in the sauna, which we will hit on. But um, I'm being a little long-winded here, but it's literally while we're having this conversation, is I want to encourage the people, if you're facing something out there, to open up and don't be afraid to ask the ethos, the God, whatever, whoever you're serving, whoever you're talking to, hey, bring somebody in my way, introduce me to the right people that are going to allow my nerves to heal, that are going to allow me to play guitar again, that are going to allow me and Alex to have kids, that are going to help me heal and be a part of that regime, if you will, that's going to help me be a better person and be a better performer and be a better husband and be a
Yeah.
better all of that.
Yeah.
So
Drake,
you've been that.
you mentioned something about vulnerability, and it kind of cued me into a gal who's really doing some great work with mental health. Brene Brown, I believe first name's Brene Brown. She's pretty popular. She's out of Austin, Texas, or
How do you
Houston.
spell that?
Brene Brown. Is that right? Brene Brown? I think it is, but people are listening. They'll know where she is. She's incredible. Anyways, she talks about the power of vulnerability, and she has a similar message of how she got to be one of the world's top, speakers, and we call it subject matter expert on things like the ego, things like vulnerability. And these are things, you live long enough on the earth and all these are going to get you at one point. If they don't, you haven't lived enough, or you're not you're not facing it. So I guess what I was trying to say is we're talking about the nervous system, we're talking about programming, and we're talking about integration. And the thing that people need to understand is you have this thing called the nervous system. It's your brain, spinal cord, and it goes all through your body, kind of like the mycelium of the mushrooms that we're starting to learn through people like Paul Stamets and Joe Rogan, and a list. It's incredible, long. But the nervous system is all your interactions with the world. And through those interactions, good and bad, we develop the operating system. Well, the one thing, I'm going to take you back to 2 years ago. A good buddy of mine, he played professional baseball for about, 16 years. His name is Mike Sweeney. Probably one of the best human beings I ever met. 5-time All-Star. Still helps out with the Kansas City Royals. Anyways, I go to a Christmas play. Their kids, he has 6 kids, and 3 of them were in the play. He had a newborn at the time that was baby Jesus. He had his daughter that was Mary, and one of the other boys was in it. And so we're watching these young kids sing and play in the Christmas play. And this is in Rancho Santa Fe, California, which is a very nice area of Southern California. And I started to notice something. I started to notice the boys, because I haven't seen this since I was up there, 30, 25, 28 years ago when I was that old. And I noticed a distinct change in the pre-kindergarten to kindergartners. And about 6, 7, 8 years old, those boys stopped singing. Why? Because they knew that wasn't cool. They were in tuned to something doesn't feel good, and I'm vulnerable up here. So what did we do at such a young age? We start to develop this thing called the ego. It's the mask that hides the fear, and we have to choose a mask. So we need an identity, because the world doesn't teach you who you are. It teaches you are what you do. And so you go out and find that identity, and you start building that ego at a young age. And for me, I became a SEAL. I mean, you don't go to try to be a SEAL for no reason. You have to have an alpha to you that, you went for, this is my honest opinion. It's not I'm a little biased, but the SEAL training is probably the hardest physically in the world. And you can't go into that without a lot of doubt. You have to have an ego going in. I used to say that the SEALs took the steel and they hardened it. They threw a lot of programming, torture, repetitions, whatever you want to call it. They forge you into one of the best fighting forces the world's ever seen. And it's not all good. And one of the things that led me on my journey in discovering things like mental health was in the military, in the SEAL community and special forces, they train you the most superior way we know how to train. They throw a lot of money at each one of the individuals that tries out for these programs. And then they sustain that high level of performance for a long time. And when they're done, there's no one there to tell them how to reprogram into who they are. There's no one there to teach people that you're stepping out of the military and you're actually this other person. You just did this thing, but this is who you really are. There's none of that. You have to go figure that out. And that's what makes transition so hard for a lot of veterans. So as a medic, I'm starting to do all these things, experience them as a patient, observe them as a medic. And one thing led to another. I got involved in the psychedelic therapy for veterans and athletes and people that have trauma. And I started to really understand the integration of the mind and the body and the soul, which most people don't even like to use that word because it's a trigger word. But those three, I feel, are like what make up the human body. And if they're injured, you have to heal them, and you have to train them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about stigmas coming through. You're talking about, psychedelics to help with the nervous system, and getting them in some of the studies that you've done. I told you about my mom, growing up in Alabama, just the stigma of the war on drugs and what that did for people years and years down the road, of the way people are just automatically triggered when they hear things like this. And then I told you about when you have a stroke, when you have something that puts you in a place where you can't move your leg, you're paralyzed, you start to lose all of that ego. It strips it all the way down to the rock, and you start to try to figure out alternate ways, whether it be Mexico to go get stem cells, which I did, which I was telling you about, or you start talking about lion's mane, or you start talking about, psychedelics. I've never done the psychedelics to help me, heal. I'm not saying I have, but I'm saying you begin when you can't walk and you don't have kids yet, and you start getting these fears of not being able to pick your kids up over your head or playing baseball or something like that with your kids. The ego is stripped completely down. The stigmas are stripped, and you say, you know what? I'd be willing to try what Reagan called Satan, what Reagan called the war. When does that, as a SEAL, what could you tell the people out there listening, whether they be 30 or they be 60 and all in between there, we're talking about movement, staying moving, meeting new people, doing uncomfortable things. What does that do for your nervous system? What does that
Yeah.
I just, could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked about this yesterday in the sauna. If you're training in a gym, let's just say you're trying to get in shape. Every trainer knows that the whole reason we call it personal training or athletic training or powerlifting, power training, whatever, is that you're looking for this thing called an adaptation response, meaning you put more load on the muscle, it needs to do more work, therefore it creates a demand to do perform the job that you're telling it to perform. That's called the adaptation model. And in the adaptation model, it takes a lot of time to get those adaptations. People that don't know the body, they think, I go to the gym, I lift weights, I get strong, I get more muscles. That's what they think. But that's like the broad stroke of how it works. But this is where my SEAL thing comes out. It's attention to detail. So how does that happen? Well, it doesn't just happen. It all starts in the nervous system. It starts with the neural activation of the muscle. Now, a couple weeks ago, I spent 4 weeks at a center called HVP. It's where we send all our top special forces operators when they're banged up and damaged after 15, 20 years of service, 30 years of service. And we send them there, and it's a great, what do you call it, treatment or program that you basically learn how to remove again. And I spent 3 out of 4 weeks just trying to learn how to fire my left glute because it wasn't firing, and I had severe damage into my hips. And so that reinforced this whole concept that where most professional athletes train, they need to train is the nervous system. It's creating adaptation. The adaptation you can create training the nervous system is far faster than training an adaptation for a muscle. So things like breath work, breath holding, underwater training, which I've done quite a lot of in my time, and I got a great opportunity to work with Laird Hamilton and his wonderful wife Abby, and Luca and all those guys up in Malibu. And so, like, people that are worth their weight as a trainer, they're looking to change up the environment. Training an training in an unstable platform is far better than training in a stable platform. These are all concepts.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Like having unstable flooring, doing an exercise one-legged versus two-legged, doing an exercise standing up versus sitting down. Excuse me?
Yeah. I saw you standing on those balls the other day.
I get a little creative, but so like that's kind of the model of how this adaptation thing works. And the beautiful thing that we're all learning in movement development is that it's all from training the nervous system. And so the more you can do that, every rep you do, you're literally building like a motor highway of information, and it gets better and better and faster and faster. And when it gets efficient, you need to change it up. So, I mean, we could talk about that all night. There's a lot of things, hot, cold therapy, probably one of the best things I've ever done. And there's so much value in training in cold water. Why? Because it sucks. And there's the response of getting in that cold water. That's what you're up against. And it's you versus your nervous system. Mm-hmm. So using the breath, staying on the exhalation will allow you to get into parasympathetic, and that'll allow you to override the nervous system and get an adaptation. The more you do this, the easier it gets. Now, that's not just the reason why we train in cold. There's a lot more other reasons. So that's kind of my passion. It's something I've always done. But I believe in it. I think you're going to see with your recovery that the more things we do to put it in an uncomfortable position or for you, it's space. You don't know where your foot is, if it's here or here, because the nervous system's not, firing where it needs to be. So what we're going to do is just constantly train that nervous system. So we're going to create a demand for those neurons to fire.
Yeah. I thought it was, and I don't have like a fact check or anything on this, but I'll give you kind of my redneck Alabama, like layman's terms of when you have an injury, say you have a knee injury, well, your body automatically throws a response to protect that knee. And your brain, it has things that protect that knee that say, hey, don't put any weight on that leg or that knee's going to cave in. Well, I can't remember what it's called or anything like that, but your body forms, the nerves kind of form around that. And even though that you completely recover from the knee injury, your knee injury is gone. 10, 15 years later, you start to approach some stairs. Your knee, you automatically you can watch people, they start to kind of gear up to go up those stairs. Even though their knee doesn't hurt, they're automatically getting ready to go up those stairs with that past, because your nervous system doesn't forget that. So this training that I've been going through and talking to, have you ever heard of a newbie machine?
Yeah.
So the newbie machine is that type of current. I can't remember if it's AC or DC, but it's the type of current similar to a stem, but it's different current, so you can work through it while you're making the movement. So statically, I would get down in a deep squat lunge with my left leg, which was very uncomfortable. With those electrodes hooked up to the body parts that control that movement. With that current going through it, I'm doing that movement, and it's hurting, but I'm going through the pain. And when I go through the pain and the pain releases, that's when, and I visualize my nerves growing, I visualize my nerves healing through that process. That is you breaking that bond that your nervous system has made over the years because of injury. And it could be an old football elbow injury. My buddy Willie Dorman's got an elbow injury from an old football. It could be a head injury from when you were 7 years old and fell off a skateboard.
Mm-hmm.
You've been protecting something for 30 years. And until you break through it, like by doing some of the stuff we're talking about, you could continue, some people never do it. They die.
Yeah.
My grandmother, she's 87 years old right now, and she's in a nursing home, and she's lived a full, awesome life. And right now her legs are tucked up under because why? Because she quit moving.
Mm.
She's in a nursing home that doesn't, no offense against the nursing home. I'm saying she quit moving.
Yeah.
You quit moving, you die.
Yes.
You quit moving, your body parts die. I think everybody knows that, but that blood flow and everything that I have been able to see through this injury and through the stroke and getting out of it, and then meeting people like you and Mike and meeting people like Griff Moore over at Resilient. Shout out to those guys in Brentwood. Like, that has taught me to keep moving, to keep rowing, to do stuff that sucks.
Yeah.
Jump into cold water, get out of hot water, go look for growth hormone therapy, go look for red light therapy. I'll try anything. I got a hyperbaric chamber. I got a Peloton. I got, a treadmill. Like, I will literally try anything. And it all in the name of healing and experience.
Yeah.
And prayer is a huge part of that. To land on that, like, my prayer is a form of meditation and is a form of training these nerves that they are taken care of, and that I can only go so far with them. And then I need, in my belief is that there's the miraculous can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You mentioned something about something getting trapped, something getting locked, and it needs to move. And you can't name anything that's alive that doesn't move. If it's alive, a tree grows. You can't. If you have no movement, you're not alive. You have to move. Cells move, muscles move, things move. And it's funny. We started talking about the integration, and I went from being this physical medic that understood the body and how it moves, how it heals. But again, you can treat an emotional wound or someone that gets locked in an emotional space because of a trauma just the same as you can treat a physical wound. And when we started to look at this concept, I mean, it blew my mind because I never heard of a thing called psychosomatic pain. And turns out most of my pain that I had, like lower back pain, like sciatic pain, was more so due to psychosomatic pain than the actual physical pain. Our brains don't register emotional pain. It manifests as a physical pain. If somebody hurts you, you might get a pain in your stomach or pain in your heart or back pain. But those manifestations are a physical way of the brain saying, this doesn't feel good, and I'm gonna hit the button, hit the alarm. So understanding this concept of integrating the emotional and the physical, and a lot of times with physical pain, there's a trauma, there's an emotional pain attached to that physical pain. So if you break your leg, you probably remember that experience, and you probably didn't, wouldn't you say, in a peaceful setting. So there's emotional trauma associated with the physical trauma. And there's a book that I texted out, was called The Body Keeps Score. And it really started to open up my eyes to this integration of how the body is. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to keep moving. So like I help out down in Mexico, where we treat a lot of our veterans and other people with the psychedelic drugs. And one of the things I realize is there needs to be a purge of this injury.
Yeah,
And
I love when you talk about this.
yeah, so like, just like a muscle, if you had a knot or you had something, you need to work that muscle out and allow the blood flow to take the injury and take all the stuff out. If you think about it from an emotional standpoint, things don't get better unless you go back in there and process it. And if you have faith, then you pray out to God, or whoever you call God, and you kind of surrender. And in that moment of surrender is when the real magic happens, because I think there's something so deeply rooted, like we talked about with the ego and the programming we had since we were kids. When you surrender something, it allows you to let go of whatever that is. And you saw it yesterday when we were doing the resistance isometric stretches with 45 pounds of weight on your back. The more you surrendered, and through the exhale, the further you melted down in the stretch.
Yeah, nose on the floor.
Yeah. So, and we got to post that. We got to do that video of you.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. But so anyways, yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm, as a medical person, like, I think that's what I'm most intrigued on right now, and in the state that we're in, is the significance of the integration in the body. And I'm pretty, every time I go to these conferences or something, I realize where we're at, and it's pretty special.
What you said yesterday, and this is not like, I don't want, well, never mind. I'm not even going to go there. I was about to say, I don't want this to turn into, it doesn't even matter. Like, I'm purging right now. And the fact that I want to ask you, you talked about you've actually done the what they call the G drug. What's it called?
The God molecule.
Yeah, you've done the God molecule. Can you carry us through what you accomplished, what you wanted to accomplish, and what was that like?
They're going to have to go to Netflix and watch this story.
Explain what the God molecule is first.
Yeah. So this is where these talks get real fun.
Yeah. And I'm not whatever. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying,
yeah, it's an alternative.
This is an alternative thing. Yeah. And when you're dealing with PTSD, or you're dealing with paralysis, like something, you cry out to God, you cry out to whoever, and you find things that help. I'm not saying this would help somebody out there listening, but I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, I could sum it up by saying this. This might be a little direct, but this is the team guy in me. When you have someone that the pain, whether it's physical or emotional or both, or life, or just, they're so unable to let go of that ego or the fear, really, deep down, it's really fear. When they're so unwilling to do that they'd rather die, they'd rather end their life, and that can be directly in suicide, or what they call deaths of despair, which is alcohol, pills, or the gunshot. And so when I started getting involved, I realized I was in the real bad time of my life when I went through the treatment. And I was almost at that place where I didn't know if I wanted to go on anymore. And one of the things that this does is you can literally die in the experience and be reborn. And it's a hell of a lot better than doing it the other way. So that, to me, and that's just not my story. That's been hundreds of guys that I've seen. and been witness to their testimonies. The other thing that's interesting about this molecule called 5-MeO-DMT, it comes from the Southwest Sonoran toad, desert toad. I think that's how you say his name. And he lives under the ground for 9 months a year. And he has these little like sacs of this molecule called 5-MeO-DMT. We have that molecule in our bodies. It's in lettuce, it's in everywhere. It's just the concentration that this toad has, it's its defense mechanism. And which is crazy because here we are, a bunch of frogmen sitting around smoking this molecule that comes from this toad's sac, and it's literally saving dudes' life. It's restarting them on a journey of learning who they are. I always used to say it was like the AED pads for the soul. And for guys that are so wound tight, or not just guys, there's a lot of women too, that are just, they need something stronger than what's out there. And there's nothing, I mean, nothing that compares to this molecule in the world of pharmaceuticals. Nothing.
So do you just go to sleep? Are you floating? Are you cognitively?
Yeah.
Is it like acid or is it like?
No. So this is not a fun drug. You can microdose it, but it's not. This is not something that you want to go hang out and do, because it's. Think about it. It's a defense mechanism from a predator. So when the predator takes a bite of this toad, it literally takes this molecule at high levels, hits the nervous system, and the nervous system says, I'm going to throw every fear alarm system at you. And the biggest one most times is what? Death. So it literally makes you think that you're dying. And that's kind of why they call it the God molecule. The question is, how the heck did someone discover this toad and start smoking it? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
But it's not a cure-all. And I always tell people that when I start talking about psychedelics, that there's no silver bullet. There's no special, magic pill that heals you from any of your trauma. This is a medicine. And I believe the definition of a medicine is a tool that allows you to heal you, right? And after being a SEAL for 16 years and an NCAA soccer player and a state champ wrestler and a lot of other things, I realized something, that our brain is reprogrammable 100%, and you can 100%. Take it as far as you want. And so that's a really good thing when the intention is there, but when it's not there, it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. What, exactly. That's cool, man. Thank you for explaining. So it's basically like dying. That's great.
It can be. It's not. That was my experience, but I would say
a toad right here.
Yeah, and think about it, toads are always displayed as like this wisdom, animal of wisdom, right? The thing that's just sitting there watching, and it's a reptile that's been around forever. But it is funny how we're saying that the toad is healing frogmen. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, and that gets me into, we've talked a lot about signs, and I posted a little while back, me and Alex have seen a lot of hawks on the property, and I love going into the Native American thoughts of what hawks symbolize, what owls symbolize, what redbirds. I see a lot of redbirds. But as a hunter and an outdoorsman, I pay attention a lot outdoors to signs. Like if I have thoughts like, if I was a deer, where would I feel safe? If I was a duck, how would I get into this hole? And then I pay attention, I observe the wind, or I observe the sun, or where it's at, or you observe, tracks, or the weather, or the barometric pressure, or the just all kinds of stuff. But like signs of redbirds, I think redbirds are lucky. That's just a overall 7-year-old thought that I had. Like 7 years old, like, man, redbirds are pretty. I feel good when I see them. Therefore, red bird, please fly right. Bring a big buck within my sight. That saying, I grew up with that saying. So it's like this thing of signs, and I feel like as a SEAL, if you don't look at signs physically, you're probably going to die. If you don't observe the signs around you, you'll die. But if you don't get on this side when you're whatever you were, if you're a ranger, if you're a SEAL, if you're a nurse, if you've experienced trauma, if you don't get on the side of paying attention to the signs and symbols of what your nervous system and your brain are telling you, you're going to die. Or you're going to wish you were dead,
Yeah.
laying up in a. Well, I'm
I
curious.
sent you that book called Deep Survival
Yeah,
that talks exactly about that concept,
yeah,
about, you know, how do some people survive horrific events and some don't. And basically, the author, whose dad was a World War II survivor, fell 6,000 feet in a metal fuselage after his plane got shot down by the Japanese, fell in a basically a exoskeleton fuselage and smacked into the ground, and he survived the fall from 5,000 feet. Farmer came up and shot him a bunch of times, which that's what they were supposed to do. This is a time of war, and he didn't die, and so he survives. And his son says, "I spent my whole life figuring out like how did my dad survive that?" And of course, you know, you want to find out who your dad is and, you know, what makes them tick so that you can understand yourself, just
mm-hmm.
the way it
Yeah,
works. And you know, he wrote this book called Deep Survival, and basically talked about like the nervous system and how, and Laird actually is the one that recommended this book to me. But
Laird Hamilton.
it's about, you know, kind of like how to stay cool, or, you know, how to not freak out, you know, like if you're driving a car and something happens, how do you get an accident? It's when you freeze, because that's the sympathetic nervous system. It's flight, fight, procreate, or freeze for your younger audience out there.
There you go.
And so if something happens and you're driving and you lock in on this threat that could kill you, you lock and you go right towards, and you hit that pole or that car, and that's the nervous system. And through training, we're trained as SEALs, like when we're driving, is to pull your eyes away from the threat. That is what every NASCAR guy does. It's, you know, it's what anybody that's been trained in how to be a tactical driver knows that. But that's something that you have to train to do, because nervous system would have you lock in to that threat because could kill you.
That's so interesting. What is the hardest thing physically that you went through as a SEAL?
What's the duration? The endurance is like short answer, but if anybody knows anything about the SEAL community, which there's been a lot of movies and books have made, the hardest thing about a SEAL training is a thing called Hell Week. And that's kind of why I was saying earlier, like it's the most physical, demanding pipeline in the military. It's because we do about 144 hours with sleep deprivation. You get up on Sunday, they put you in a room, you watch some movies, and they put you in a tent, and then they commence breakout where they shoot a bunch of guns and explosives. And you start from that moment, you do not stop, and you burning about 12 to 13,000 calories a day, eating 5 meals a day. And you don't sleep until Wednesday afternoon for 90 minutes. And then you get another 90-minute break on Thursday afternoon. But nobody really sleeps because you'll lock up and you won't be able to, it'll hurt too bad. So that, I think it's like 212 miles with a boat on your head. It's pretty gnarly. It's gnarly. And I was an instructor, so I got to see on the other side of it. But yeah, that's that. You know, here's a perfect example of the nervous system and programming. They bring you in before Hell Week and they say, you're not allowed to go see any civilian doctors after Hell Week. your blood chemistry is so bad that they'll commit you to like a hospital because your dopamine's down, you know, there's no serotonin from, because you're not sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have said it takes like 4 years to recover from the 1 week of Hell Week. And I don't know, maybe longer, but yeah, I mean, it's not just the Hell Week, it's the whole 6 months of physical training, and then a whole another 6 months of you actually learning the skill sets of like house clearing, jumping, and combat diving, and land warfare, and all this stuff. And then you go to your team, and then it's an 18-month workup, basically your version of kind of touring, I would say, and where you're just constantly training for 10 months out of the year. You're gone, and then you deploy for 6 months, and you come back and you do it again. So it's a strenuous job. It's fun as hell. I mean, you're getting paid to work out and blow things up and drive cars and jump out of planes. It's fun, but it's taxing. And unfortunately, back then, a lot of us weren't, we didn't know what we knew now. So yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting that I've learned from you the last 2 or 3 days, I guess, is kind of when I'm out on tour, or when I see it, or I'm in the field hunting, or ever since I've been a kid, I've always had an inventor's spirit. Like, and I love when you said, you know, what SEALs do is they'll take something, and y'all had like sewing kits and all this stuff, and you would take something and make it better. Like you would customize to where you were faster to draw out of your holster, or you would customize and make your coat better, or your helmet, or it didn't matter. Like, and I'm always thinking on the road, like, about stuff like, can you speak into that, and what the SEALs and what that mentality is?
Yeah.
It's actually
So
not to die, I guess.
no, yeah. I mean, I think it comes from this outside of the box thinking, where even early on in training, you know, there's nothing like a BUDS instructor, a cadre of guys they're not just gate holders, or, you know, gate protectors of people trying to get into the SEAL community. They're there to test the quality of the person. They're there to see what they got, not when they're feeling good, but when they're feeling bad. They really want to see the character of these guys. And they're not preacher boys. They're not nuclear scientists. They're tough dudes that are willing to go out there and possibly die for their country. But there's a camaraderie there that happens that I don't think I'll ever experience something like that. And I think it goes into what, you know, we're talking about is, you know, like using these things that happen in our lives for good, flipping the script of, you know, victim, or, you know, F this person for hurting me, into like, how can I use that to make me a better person? How is God or the universe speaking to me? And was he trying to teach me? And a lot of times it's get the hell out of the way and just live. Get yourself out of the way and just live. And let me back up to the why we're so like into changing things and tweaking things. Is we were taught, like, you can think outside the box. If you get caught, you're going to pay the man. But we encourage you to question, to poke holes in, to see if you can make it better. Because in our line of work, when we get a mission and we had to go out and conduct that mission, we planned the hell out of that thing. We called it dirt diving, where we had a dirt table or a sand table, and we would figure out what's the best way to entry to that village, or what's the best way to do this, or how can I do this, or do I have to go silent, and so, you know, you're trying to customize everything. It's kind of like somebody in production and film, or in the music industry. You're always trying to tweak your stuff. But that's like, see, that to me, like, speaks about like the mind, you know. It's like, it's always trying to adapt. It's always trying to find a better way to do things. And I don't know if that's just like certain people or certain mindset, but I think, you know, it's just a way of solving problems.
I'm obsessed with it. You know, I just had a conversation before we got on with my manager, Harrison, and I was talking about, you know, and my guys always say innovate, 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 innovate. And I always do that over and over and over and over. And they thought it was like a joke or I got it off a movie or something. But what I'm trying to say is the music industry is one of the greatest industries in the world, innovation wise, and it's one of the laziest industries in the world, innovation wise. And I say that as an opinion. I can share my opinions on here. And the reason I say that is because there's a machine, there's a certain way things are done, and it works. And when it works, people try to replicate that. So it's like, Tom Petty, I love Tom Petty, so I'm gonna put, I'm gonna get this guitar and go for this tone and get this bass and go. But it really is sinking into like what makes you happy and what makes you really buzz, like paying attention to those symbols and those signs and then following that musically and then innovating, whether it be dropping chains on a drum head, or using stringing a bass up like a guitar, or using a different amp. Using what if you amped up? We got, me and my old drummer got this idea one time to put a mic on all your drums, and then run the mic into an amp. So your drums haven't, like, would it work? I don't know, but it is the thought and it is the thing that counts. It is the innovation that counts. So
You're
I've
saying
always
put
been
all this a whole bunch of different speakers into the amp instead of one.
no, I'm talking about mic your drums, mic each individual drum, and then run the mic through an amp.
Oh, okay.
And then mic the amp and then record what the drum sounds like through the amp.
Did you try it?
No, I didn't try it, but we're always, um, I'm always curious, to the point where I'm about to release this record March the 11th. And my manager tells me all the time, like, we've never managed an artist like you. And I always tell them, I've never had a manager like you. So in art, in pursuing this, because I know you are multifaceted, you're not only a trained killer, but you're a, you're into cinematography, you're into movies, you're into music, you're into exercise and all this stuff. So for me, production, and like, I want to figure out how to pick this barn up out here and fly it around Nashville and play shows while I'm doing that. And I want to literally figure that out. I want to figure out how to make the best show that I possibly can, and that is push the envelope. I always go back to like Steve Jobs. Like, if you'd have told our grandparents or great grandparents that you could literally pick up a phone and talk to somebody in China, they'd have called you crazy. What is that? I literally think it's the same energy that brought us together. Like, what is that? What is the energy that is floating through? Some say, well, it's a signal. It's it's telephones, it's whatever. But you get what I'm saying?
It's called creativity. That's the energy.
Yeah.
You want to put a name on it, label
Yeah.
it. That's creativity. That's being a human being. I mean, that's what separates us from all the other animals, is this ability to comprehend and do what you just said about, finding a better way. It's being creative. I mean, it's no surprise to me that the leaps and bounds that we're making in mental health and medicine in general happened after this time of crisis with COVID, right? So you have this sharpening, this, whatever you want to call it, for whatever reason it exists, it is, and the way how it's being handled, it is. But because of this thing that human beings manifested and had a lot to do with how they dealt with it, there's something higher that's at work here, and that we call it trials or tribulations, and that's sharpening us as human beings to figure things out. Like, maybe not to give, I hope I don't get kicked off the Instagram for saying this, but not to let the government have so much control or power, or mandate things that, like, we have rights to do because we're freaking free human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like, there's these things that happen in life. And I think if we could get people could look at their pain and their suffering and use it like a vitamin and say, you know what, this happened to me. I don't like it. I don't have to, like it, but I need to better learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And part of that dealing with it is sitting in it and then letting it go.
Yeah.
It is so hard to do. How could something that, if this was some emotional pain or something you're holding on to, how can it be, and everyone's telling you it's killing you, how can that be so hard to let go? It boggles my mind. And that goes back to the nervous system of locking in the sympathetic and holding on to something that knows it actually could be killing us. Yeah. So that's what I'm really at, is how to reprogram that and how to release that mentally, physically, or spiritually.
Hey, I want to talk about the mentality that we were talking about yesterday, of how, when I say I'm glad the stroke happened, I'm glad now when I look at things happen. And I told you about the story of the Chinese farmer, didn't I?
Yes.
Yes. And like that mentality of when something quote unquote bad happens, when the world says, oh man, that cancer is bad. Well, anybody would think right off the bat that the cancer is bad. Anybody would think an AVM rupturing in your head is bad. My friend Taylor Morgan says all the time, he says, I'm accident prone. And I say, I do not receive that. I am not accident prone. I'm the luckiest son of a bitch in the world. Mm. My mom's not a bitch. I'm sure she's watching. But it's like, I am the luckiest dude in the whole world. And that mentality, we talked about it. I love this subject. I love it. And if I've gained one thing out of this AVM rupturing in Roanoke, Virginia on August the 16th, I've gained this. And it is the most powerful thing, I think, that I could get out of it. And that is that there is nothing that happens to you, in my belief system, there's nothing that happens to you that is not supposed to happen to you. And taking that and flipping everything, whether it be drop record deals, whether it be songs falling on their face, whether it be fertility issues, whether it be going down a bad road of drugs, whether it be a divorce, a wife taking everything and taking your kids, and I know you went through a lot of that stuff. There's nothing that happens to us that does not happen to us for good. That is my belief. There's nothing that happens to us that we cannot flip on its back for good. And that is not fake. I used to be surrounded by some folks that would kind of ridicule me for being positive. They were like threatened, I guess, by me being positive. It's like, he's full of shit, or he's this, or he's that. But then my cousin Chad Turner up here in the barn last time said, then he lived through this. Then he lived through this stroke. And then he got an opportunity at the highest level to practice what he preached. So I took it as a great honor to go watch what I can do. Yes. Watch what I can do out of this, learning how to walk again. Watch what I can do when I'm playing guitar, when I'm doing all this stuff again. So I want to talk a little bit to that mentality that how you perceive that, my explanation of that, and how you develop that through the tumultuous life that you live, because you've lived through some crap too, man.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more in line with you on that. And here's the thing, everything we're saying right now, this is us regurgitating a program that we created after saying it many times and thinking it many times and praying about it many times and actually feeling it, which you can read it all you want. You can watch podcasts, you can be an expert at it, but until you feel something, then you really get it. You really get, what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is reprogramming creating the story that we tell ourselves, you know. And you're using these trials and tribulations to sharpen your, because you have something that most people don't have, and that's faith. And that's a gift that your parents gave you, that God gave you, that life gave you, and you chose to accept that. You chose to say, you said, this is going to be my program. I'm going to walk the walk. And I've met so many awesome, strong people in my life, like the Laird Hamiltons and the Mike Sweeneys, and the list can go on. But when you see that in somebody, I don't know if other people see that, but when I see it, I'm like, I want that. I want that, and I want that program. Mm-hmm. And so you learn, and that's what life is. It's like you really pick what program you want. That's the beautiful thing about this life. We all have a choice, no matter what situation we're in. And it probably a hell of a lot easier for me to say that, sitting in Nashville in a nice air-conditioned or heated room with my beautiful wife, when there's somebody in prison or someone in Afghanistan. There's perspective is the key here. But it doesn't really matter, because no matter where you're at, these programs that we can create, anybody can get them. Anyone.
Tap into them.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's good stuff. Well, music. What do you sent me a song, and honestly, I didn't listen to it because I'm an idiot.
I'm sorry.
But what is that song about? Explain it to me.
Well, that was a deep song, and that was something that this is a great segue for the nervous system too. Is you're a musician, your ear is exceptional, right? You can hear if you're off, if you're on. You feel the rhythm. The reason why music is probably one of the most powerful things on the planet, it stimulates this section in our brain called the frontal motor cortex, which happens to be the part of the brain that gets injured during a concussion, a TBI, we call it, traumatic brain injury, like a bomb going off, or even shooting like a heavy weapon hours and hours and hours, or an emotional injury. It's all right here in the frontal motor cortex. So the fact that this creative center where we can decipher and really process story through a song or a picture or a movie, there's something to frequency, right? And that frequency through song makes us feel good. It hits if you hit a minor note, you feel darkness. If you play a peaceful melody, there's reasons as a musician, what those are, what they are. Yeah. As a songwriter. Yeah. And so back to the therapy stuff that I do in the healing space, we're seeing a huge amount of money. I'm talking hundreds of billions of dollars investing right now into things like sound therapy, because they're onto something, and they realize that if our brain is made up of electrical impulses, and those electrical impulses are basically energy has a frequency. And so it makes sense that things like music or sound bowls or other modalities can actually help heal damaged parts of the nervous system. So the next 5 years, it's going to be incredible for what people can do to self-medicate or to treat themselves. And I'm telling you, Drake, if everybody's listening, they heard it here first. We're going to turn the healthcare system and the insurance up on its head because of what people are finding out, and the studies that are going on at places like Johns Hopkins University, NYU, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, all these places, they're getting it. The cell phone that most people are watching this on right now, the iPhone, that started from Steve Jobs. And you know what Steve Jobs did? He did LSD in a controlled way, in a microdose way. And I'm not telling people that they need to go out and go do LSD right now. I'm just saying that when you have national grants that the government is going to give $50 million to universities so they can test and treat professional athletes and use things like microdosing LSD to get them off of narcotics and painkillers. Well, that's what medicine's all about. It's literally
Experiment.
Yeah. And so like I said, I'm just, these things are really coming about, and it'll be interesting to see how the messaging plays out with the media and everything. But yeah, if they're looking for information for this stuff, there's a couple places they can go to. One of them is called MAPS. It's a organization out of San Francisco run by a guy named Rick Doblin, and they're basically the overarching group that handles all the psychedelic research. But John Hopkins, there's a person that I consider a colleague of mine and a friend, Deborah Mosh, who's she's a head neurologist at a University of Miami Medical School, who basically helped identify key things in the 1980s when Miami and the rest of the country went on with the cocaine pandemic. She was brought in as the top neurologist to understand how this is killing people. And she went down this rabbit hole and found this thing called ibogaine, which is it's a plant or a fruit that comes from Africa that these tribes were using. People started going down there that were heroin addicts and finding an enormous amount of healing and successful therapy with heroin addicts with this plant. And so she's basically the leading gal in charge of ibogaine and all the research with this molecule that comes from a plant called iboga. And it's things like that I always think of those movies like Medicine Man with Sean Connery, and growing up watching those movies, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is really happening right now. We're seeing it unfold.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's inevitable, right? Like we're all so connected now with what we're doing. I mean, we're talking, to quite a few people, sitting in her home. But I wanted to talk a little bit about MJ and your vision. Me and Alex, I was telling y'all, they came over. For everybody listening out there, y'all came over the other day, and we just talked about things and talked about. I'm a real big advocate of writing stuff down that you want to accomplish, and I don't think it's bull crap. I think it's like it's just you got to do it. And so I started talking to you guys about Nashville and the struggles that y'all were having and going through, and then the things that you wanted to accomplish and what. So I wanted to share with the folks out there, what MJ does, what you want to, like your perfect case scenario, and it don't have to be, just explain it. What's your perfect case scenario, and what do you want to do in Nashville, and what do you want to do in the world, and how do you want to make the world a better place and the people better for you being in this on Earth?
Oh, thanks, Jake or Drake. I appreciate that.
It's Drake.
Who is this guy, honey? Who are we talking to again?
What's your name?
Who is the guy? Man, you had the song that came out a couple years ago. It was called "I Have Friends in High Places."
It's Jake. It's Jake Owen.
Yeah. So, why do I think I was brought on this earth? I don't know. Like I said before, I always wanted to be a doctor, and I think God said that you're a healer, but it's a different kind of healer. And after a lot of these ceremonies, a lot of the guys sit around with tears in their eyes and like they've never felt like so passionate and so clean and so like refreshed before. And I realized something. I said, like God, like here's how God works. I didn't even want to be a SEAL. I didn't know anything about. I didn't have any clue, like never. It just happened, and I didn't ever plan on marrying my wife. It just happened, and I didn't plan on coming to Nashville. It just happened, but I allowed him to happen because everything that I was doing in my life was preparing me that way. But it was like, it's like it just started to happen and it started to unfold without resistance. And that's why I called myself Flow State Frogman from the beginning of Instagram when I started 2 years ago. Was I believe in this flow state concept. I believe that things flow in life, they move, and you cannot just stay up on top of the wave and ride that damn crest. You have to fall on your face in a wave and learn how to get back up. And the better you get at falling, the better you get at getting back up, and the better you get at riding the highs of life. But you can't just ride the highs. You have to experience the lows. And if you can do that, we're getting back into the nervous system. That's truly living, is like what Paul says in the Bible. It's, whether you have a lot or little, be joyful in all things. It's like, it's a mindset. It's just a mindset, and it's a program that we can do. And so what I think, I like to share the stuff that I learned. Like, I love helping people. I love, I'm not afraid to talk about issues like psychedelics or mental health or suicide or, how the body works. Or I don't get into too much politics. I did 16 years in the government. I'm good with that. I want to create now. I have time to create. And my wife was a professional horse trainer and rider. And coming to Nashville has really sparked a lot of prayer and meditation on what we could bring to Nashville, but also at a national level of, movement therapy, and how to teach people how to heal themselves. But what I liked about the horses was that, horses are powerful animals. I mean, they are beautiful beasts that move really damn well for a 2,000-pound animal. And they're very sensitive too. And I think there's something that we can learn from them about energy. And when we are, let's say, physically or emotionally damaged, that we need to learn how to reprogram that stuff. And I think, like, riding horses and in this amazing environment that we live in Nashville with this, just the vibe here is incredible. I've lived all over the country. I've been all over the world. And I honestly have to say, Drake, that I've never been somewhere I felt so at home, because it just feels so good. And the people here are so, like, it's just so Americanic. It's incredible. So I think we're going to do like a movement center, a healing space, be for-profit, non-profit. And I think the other side of the movement would be, creating a fitness arena where you're doing things like the hot cold contrast therapy, the sauna. Maybe we'll have a sauna podcast. I think that's what my idea is. And doing the movement and the training stuff, and maybe even doing some shooting of the weapons and archery, because there's a lot of therapies that you can do. Like, archery therapy is probably one of the best things a lot of people are doing now. It's cheap, and it's very peaceful, and it's just all about stillness. So I think I hope that's what we're planning on doing out here.
So a facility, a grand stadium of, what do you call it? What do you call it? Like, what's it in Rome? What am I missing on? What was it in Rome? The great stadium?
Oh, I should know some Italian.
Not
The Coliseum.
The Coliseum. Like, y'all are gonna have a Coliseum. Like, visualize it. It's gonna have cold pools. It's gonna have saunas. It's gonna have horses on one side. You're gonna have, you're gonna have a full, like, almost like a football field of turf where it's got squat racks and full movements. So that's what you're gonna have. So that's
we forgot one more thing. It wouldn't be a healing space without a badass aquatic center, because I do love the water, and I think there's some healing that the water does. And I've trained.
We got to get Laird to come too, because I love that dude. I've been following him for a long time.
I texted him last night. I told him I'm going out to Malibu. We're going to talk about it.
So for the folks out there listening, Laird Hamilton, follow him. He is the man. know that me and the band, before every show, breathing is everything. And we do the 11-minute, if you look up uh, Wim Hof, just look up Wim Hof on Google or whatever, um, and go. About 3 videos down. There's an 11-minute video. We did that every single show before the show, and it brought us all together and linked us together as a band. It was unbelievable. And I mean, you feel like you're going to pass out the first couple of times, but keep moving, keep pushing. If it's hurting, it's probably good for you. Keep twisting and turning and grooving and coming to shows and going to shows and going out there and being safe and being empathetic to people. And I have never wanted to do a podcast. I had this thought in my head of like, everybody's doing a podcast. Why would anybody give a shit what we got to say? Well, I'm past that now, and so I ask everybody what the podcast should be called today. And me and you had a very good name for a podcast, and I really, really liked that. What was the name?
I think it was The Testimony.
Man, I love it. I love The Testimony. And I'll say, I'm going to quote a Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights, which folks, go listen to Green Lights. Go listen to Matthew McConaughey's audio book, Green Lights, if you haven't. It's awesome. In reference to the testimony, we're talking about people's stories. We're talking about a pandemic that has made people 6 feet away, that has made people go lock themselves in a room and this and that. And that the key to all this help and all this thing, in my belief, is talking like this, is talking and getting out there and making music or making pottery or skipping rocks or loving on somebody or just doing something hard or different or twisting. But he says, in reference to the testimony, he says, when asked if I'm religious, the root word of religion is leganas. The Latin word is leganas, and leganas just means together, together. And means again. So if it's together, together again, then call me religious, because I want to gather. I'm a social person. I want to be with people and see people and go do this, go talk and communicate. So I don't know where I was going with that, other than
You're talking about the root
the
meaning.
testimony.
You're talking about the root meaning of testimony.
But
And
it came from testimony. I love the testimony, and I don't know if I'm going to start a podcast, but this was fun, and we're wrapping it up now. But I'm sure some people got some good stuff out of this, and I just love that God put us in the same world and same thing. So we're going to stretch out. We're going to do some videos in the next months of me stretching and being broke and bent and all this stuff. But it's about health. It's about healing. It's about hope. It's about love, all the fruits of the Spirit. And, it's about inviting everybody and being non-judgmental about which walk of life you come from, which walk of life you come from. So thanks, dude, for joining the first episode of the podcast, The Testimony.
Hell yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't know if we've named it that yet, but I do like that name.
It's not set. It's like a kid, naming your kid, right? It's like, yeah, I'm thinking this, but we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll see you very soon. Peace and love out there.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, and I'll holler at you.
Thanks, Drake. Thanks, everybody.
Be good. Yeah.